I was a lousy student. I hardly ever ate lunch because I never did my homework, and my teacher in the 3rd standard, Mrs. Nelson, would make me sit outside the tent at Delhi Public School during lunch and do my homework. Because instead of doing my homework, I was playing cricket the previous day. Some months ago, I was on a plane from Dallas to Atlanta, and there was an Indian guy with all of his funny stuff, you know, the high-tech stuff. He's working on 2 or 3 things at the same time. He even had something dangling from the window to give us the flight paths. I said, this guy is quite sophisticated. All I can do to press my BlackBerry buttons and my computer to say undo, undo, undo. So finally he looked at me and he said, you're a reader. I said, yeah, how do you guess? He said, you're reading. Then he looked at me and he said, Delhi, Hindustan se ho? Are you from India? I said, yes, sir. I said, you too? He said, yes. I said, where are you from? He asked me. I said, I'm from Delhi. I lived in Delhi till I was 20. He said, really? Where? I said, Sundarnagar, Kakanagar area. He said, oh, I used to live in Sundarnagar. I said, wow. He said, did you go to DPS, Delhi Public School? I said, yeah. He said, this is amazing. I said, yeah, I went. He said, you went to DPS? I said, yes. He said, were you ever a student of Mrs. Nelson? 3rd C. They sent the worst students to Mrs. Nelson. And I qualified at the top of that list. Her favorite line was, Thappad khayega muh par. In Hindi, it meant you're going to get a slap on your face. And I did. And it was unfortunate because nobody told me she was a left-hander. So the first time I'm standing in front of her, not having done my homework, I'm watching that right hand. You know, I'm going away and away and away, and wow. So he says, you were in Mrs. Nelson's class? I said, yes. He said, me too. And then he raised his hand and gave me a high five and said, we made it, we made it. When I came back home and told my wife, she burst out laughing because I told her stories about Mrs. Nelson. I said, you never forget what happened in this plane from Dallas to Atlanta. You know, we think we know so much at the moment. We know very little of the Grand Weaver and his plan for the future. The finger of God is in all of history. Secondly, how they harnessed an arena of persecution and transformed it into a platform of opportunity. Just this week, the Archbishop of Canterbury, a very prominent evangelical, has written an article that Christian martyrdom is coming back to front and center all over as Christians are being offered to the lions once again, and it drew attention of the media. The oldest Aramaic-speaking village in Syria is Ma'alula. I've been there. And the thugs went and burned down the churches, burned down their holy places, slaughtered many of them, destroying thousands of years of history. In Kenya, they were asked to identify themselves if they were of the Muslim faith, and they could walk out, and they were given a test question as they were walking out. If you're a Christian out there, you're being slaughtered by these thugs. I know those who are devout in it will disavow it, and thank God they do. But the world is still not saying very much. While the follower of Jesus Christ is being tormented and tortured for his or her faith, Iran plays the lead role here. I have seen those tortured for their faith. I've seen those who paid very heavy price. But Oz Guinness has made a profound comment about China. He said, you know, the Chinese church somehow survived the deprivations of communism. The question is, will it survive the abundance of capitalism? Sometimes when we are deprived, we are forced to take our faith more seriously and truly prove what it means in our hearts. Some of you may be personally suffering physically. Dr. Jowett said, if you speak to a hurting people, you will never lack for an audience. I don't know how many of you have spoken to in Delhi and here who are going through great pain. A young woman who may be here this morning, whom I invited to come, spoke so highly of Brother Reuben and of Shalini. She recognized my name while she was serving, and all of us guys sitting there. She knew we were leaving this afternoon. She asked, could she pack a lunch for all of us? She is a waitress in that dining room. And the first day I was there, she just came over to me and she said, can I talk to you for just a moment? And the tears started running down her face. She said, I'm a very unhappy woman. If I tell you everything that's happening in my home, it breaks my heart. Please pray for me, sir. Total stranger. Total stranger. So it is with some of us, pain, the hurt. I want to read for you a thought by the great Scottish writer James Stewart. Listen to what he says in his book, The Strong Name. It is a glorious phrase that he led captivity captive. The very triumphs of his foes it means he used for their defeat. He compelled their dark achievements to subserve his ends, not theirs. They nailed him to the tree, not knowing by that very act that they were bringing the world to his feet. They gave him a cross, not guessing that he would make it a throne. They flung him outside the gates to die, not knowing that in that very moment they were lifting up all the gates of the universe to let the King of Glory come in. They thought to root out his doctrines, not understanding that they were implanting imperishably in the hearts of men the very name they intended to destroy. They thought they had God with his back to the wall, pinned and helpless and defeated. They did not know it was God himself who had tracked them down to that point. Now here's the clinching line. He did not conquer in spite of the dark mystery of evil. He conquered through it. He did not conquer in spite of the dark mystery of evil. I don't think this is a word game he is playing. God conquers in your life and mine through the dark mystery of evil. You see, we were given only one prohibition. Do not eat of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, because on the day that you do, you'll be as God, knowing good and evil. What it really meant was, don't play God. Don't play God. Because if you play God and define good and evil, everything else becomes up for grabs. They disobeyed that, and ate of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil, quote. Have you looked at our world now? Every tree is protected except for the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. We've redefined everything. And what chaos in this world in which we live. If you're going through suffering and pain, I urge you to seek God each day and ask him what he wants to accomplish through it. What does he want to accomplish through it? I look at my own life many times in all that went wrong and at the moment seemed insurmountable. And today all I can say is I thank God that he brought me through it and taught me what he wanted me to learn. Malcolm Muggeridge says this, contrary to what might be expected, I look back on the experiences that at the time seemed especially desolating and painful with particular satisfaction. Indeed, I can say with complete truthfulness that everything I've learned in my 75 years in this world, and everything that has truly enhanced and enlightened my existence, has been through affliction and not through happiness, whether pursued or attained. In other words, if it were ever to be possible to eliminate affliction from our earthly existence by means of some drug or other medical mumbo-jumbo, the result would not be to make life delectable, but to make it too banal and trivial to be endurable. This, of course, is what the cross signifies, and it is the cross of Jesus Christ more than anything else that has called me inexorably to Christ. You know, V.S. Naipaul wrote about India, the Trinidadian Indian, wrote the book A Wounded Civilization. Yes, India has lived through a lot of wounds. The whole film Mother India, Nagari Nagari Dware Dware Dhundure Savariya, you're looking for some respite, some rest from Nagar to Nagar, from river beside, whatever you keep going. So has China, so has Russia. These countries have endured a lot of pain. Maybe out of the civilizations that have experienced much pain, the cross can come through with shining beauty, and the empty tomb can be presented as the greatest hope for humanity. I just want you to know that the mystery of suffering is not as elusive as we may sometimes think it is. The early church conquered, and how they harnessed an arena of persecution and harnessed it to a platform of opportunity. Let me move to my final thought. Number one, as we saw that they saw the finger of God in all of history and Christ as its central figure, how they harnessed an arena of persecution, transformed it into a platform of opportunity. And number three, how they saw priority of an individual over methodology. This is my key point. The priority of an individual over methodology. You know, we can memorize our answers, we can copy our answers, but in the end, God's answer through you is you. It's you. The way He has made you. No, the message is not about you. You are not the centerpiece, but it's the way He has made you individually. I was talking to Brother Anand Mahadevan earlier, and his testimony was first published. I was thousands of miles away, and I immediately copied it, put it on my computer, on my BlackBerry, and I read it to so many people. God used him in the place He placed him. It's the same with you. It's the same with me. He's made you so unique, so unique. You are without replication. It's sui generis, one of a kind. The day you accept that you are the way He hardwired you and softwired you and made you to be who you are, you will take that moment and realize He can use you in a place and setting that He can use nobody else. Billy Graham was asked once by a reporter, I've heard many preachers better than you, how come He's chosen you to be the evangelist to the world? Dr. Graham was a very humble man and a very shy man. Looked at him and said, you know, when I get to heaven, that is going to be my first question. Why me? Why me? If you will go away with this closing truth today, He has made you unique for His cause and placed you where He wants you to be. He's the grand weaver. He's the great designer. He has His Wesleys and Spurgeons and McShanes and Andrew Murrays and Bonars and all of them. But He has you. He has the Haydens, he has the Sanjas, he has the Lukes. He will call you by name. He has you. I want you to think about this and meditate upon it, because you know what? When you think about it in these terms, Joseph didn't write a book on 50 different dreams and how to interpret them. If he were living in our time, some publisher would have said, Joseph, write a book on dreams. If Moses were alive in our time, they would have wanted him to open Bush University. Jonah would have been asked to publish exclusive photographs from the inside of a whale and how to use them in evangelistic meetings. Samson would be autographing jawbones. David would be issuing slings to his whole army. No. He has fashioned you the way he has fashioned nobody else. I want to close with one or two illustrations and make a closing application. I was telling the audience in Delhi that when I applied to become a pilot and went to Dehradun for my interview, I was a teenager. The only reason I applied to be a pilot is not passing anything else. So I said, I'll try being a pilot. And I placed in the top 10. There were 300 or so there, and they were going to just select a handful. I said, I'm going to make it. Did everything well, endurance, this, that, theory, all that, okay. So I sat down for my final psychological interview with a rather Churchillian-looking wing commander type guy. In his uniform, he sat across the table, and he looked at me, and he said, Beta, son, you have done very well. And he kept on talking about how well I'd done, and I began to get fearful. I said, something bad is about to come forth. And he looked at me and he said, Beta, I'm going to reject you. I said, pardon? He said, I'm going to reject you. I said, may I ask you, sir, why? He said, this job is about killing, and psychologically you are not equipped to kill. I said, wow. I walked away from there, came back home, another failure. And a few days later, a Canadian missionary by the name of Russell Self was speaking at the Free Church in Delhi. And after he spoke, I said, Mr. Self, you don't know me. Can I just have half an hour of your time? He said, yes, I'm staying at the Constantia Hall, YW area here. Come and see me tomorrow. I've told this story in Walking from East to West. I went to see him and I told him, I'm not going to make it. I said, everywhere, one way or the other, I hear I'm going to reject you. He turned the Bible very gently, talked to me, and he said, you know, when God takes away from you something you really want, it is to protect you for what He really wants for you. His family traveled for miles in Toronto once to come and meet with me because they'd read this story about their dad, Russell Self. I said, yes, Russell told me these words, and he opened to Psalm 37:5 and gave me that verse. I still sign it many times when I'm signing my book, Walking from East to West, either that or Romans 1:16. If God had not blocked my way all those steps, how could He have ever opened the way to where He wanted me to be? That's it. How could He have ever opened the way to where He wanted me to be if I had not responded to what He's blocked me from? So I want to close with an application for you all. I told Reuben, I said, Reuben, a conference for conference sake will come and go. And we do a lot of conferences around the globe as guest speakers. I said, my prayer for this conference is that God will raise up some young men and women for a change of course in their lives, and maybe make them some of the finest apologists the world has ever seen. That's my prayer. I've prayed for you, that out of this, just forget the age right now. Disregard the age. It may be that as a young man or a young woman or a middle-aged, it may be wherever you are, that God has a plan for you to become an articulator and an evangelist, an apologist for God's kingdom. And when you go from here, two things need to happen: the call inside your heart and the gift affirmed by others. So it's not just that I feel impelled, but that others are affirming in me that this ability, this gift, this skill is a gift from God, not for your own doing or your own enjoyment, or you will implode under the weight of egotistical pride. That's not what it's about. If He impels you from within and compels you from without, He will open the opportunities. And my prayer for this conference is that even as the hard work has gone on by others and the investment has been made by so many, and we've merely invested a few hours in coming here and some thoughts in pouring it out, that God will raise up from this conference some men and women who will become evangelists, who are undergirded by apologetics, to become proclaimers of the gospel, giving answers to men and women here and around the world. That's my prayer. And if that's what happens in your life, you have to be seeking it, and others need to be reaffirming it. Maybe He'll call you somewhere else. Maybe He will keep you where you are. In the early church, a story from Fox's Book of Martyrs, a man by the name of Telemachus, living in a little village, old man, and the word of God comes to him to go to Rome and proclaim. He didn't like Rome, he didn't want to go to Rome, but that impelling was there, and he goes. He goes to Rome and walks in through one of these arenas where a gladiatorial fight is going on. He had no idea what this was about. Shocked to watch the bloodletting orgies going on. And he stands up in the middle of that crowd and shouts out, "In the name of Christ, stop this thing. In the name of Christ, forbear." And in that amphitheatrical setting, his voice resonates, and he's running down the steps. In the name of Christ, stop this thing. Gets into the middle of the arena, and the muscle-bound gladiators watching him coming, voices come from the stands, "Run him through, run him through." And he's heaved down and plunged through, and he's falling on the ground to whisper one more time, "In the name of Christ, stop this thing." The biographer says many other forces came together, but the death of Telemachus sealed the opposition so that there was never more a gladiatorial fight in the Roman arena. You know, secularism has its strengths, as governments cannot enforce belief. Pluralism has its strengths. You must have options given so that the truth has a place to be uttered. Privatization has no place if you're taking your faith and parking it only in your bedroom. Time now to address the secularized world, the pluralized world, the world in search of answers, and take it out into